Imagine this for a second. You wake up and you are doing everything perfectly.
Right, like the absolute perfect morning routine.
Exactly. You start your day with this beautifully curated bowl of iron-fortified oatmeal.
Maybe topped with some organic chia seeds for good measure.
Oh, absolutely. And then you make sure to eat your dark leafy greens for lunch, like a massive spinach salad.
You dutifully take your daily multivitamins.
Your expensive mineral supplements, maybe a probiotic too. You basically follow what every fitness blog and wellness influencer out there would confidently call a perfectly balanced, nutrient-dense diet.
You're putting in all the work.
All of it.
Mm.
Yet, despite all of this exhaustive effort and financial investment, you are just dragging.
Constantly tired.
You have this persistent brain fog that just will not lift no matter how much sleep you get. Or you just feel physically run down, like your baseline operating system is running on low battery.
Which is so frustrating.
It's one of the most uniquely frustrating experiences out there. You are putting the absolute premium fuel into the tank, but the engine is still sputtering and stalling.
And you're left wondering why.
Why is that happening? Well, today we are going to tell you exactly why, down to the molecular level. Welcome to the deep dive. I'm Parker.
And I'm Blake.
And together as specialists in this space, our absolute passion is taking these incredibly complex nutritional concepts, decoding the raw biological data, and translating it into perfectly actionable insights.
Things that you can actually deploy in your daily life.
Because the answer to that chronic exhaustion you might be feeling isn't necessarily that you aren't eating enough of the right things.
Not at all. The big reveal today centers on a physiological concept called silent starvation.
Silent starvation. That changes the entire paradigm right there.
It really does. Because it is not about what you are failing to put into your mouth. It is entirely about what your gastrointestinal tract is failing to absorb into your bloodstream.
Which is a fundamental distinction that most of the wellness industry just completely ignores.
Completely. And the global statistics on this specific phenomenon are frankly staggering. If we look at the overarching data, over 2 billion people worldwide currently suffer from clinically diagnosable micronutrient deficiencies.
Just let that number sink in for a moment.
2 billion.
2 billion. And what is most alarming from a clinical perspective is that this number is actively rising.
Despite the fact that we currently possess greater access to high-calorie, supposedly fortified food than at any other point in human history.
Yeah, we see this pattern constantly. Individuals present with these impeccably clean, hyper-managed diets, yet their comprehensive blood work returns looking like an absolute disaster zone.
They're clinically iron deficient?
Their serum zinc levels are bottomed out, or their bone density scans show they are severely struggling to utilize calcium.
Even though they're eating massive amounts of it.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, because on the surface it sounds like an impossible biological paradox. How can you be physically chewing and swallowing highly nutrient-dense food, yet your cells are literally starving for those exact nutrients? It seems completely counterintuitive.
It does. So the mission for our deep dive today is to uncover the invisible dietary blockers.
We are talking about universally praised, perfectly healthy foods that are secretly sabotaging your nutrient absorption from the inside out.
But I want to set a very clear baseline for you right now. We are not going to tell you to stop eating your favorite foods.
No. Definitely not. We're not adding to the endless list of dietary restrictions.
Instead, we are going to provide a strategic science-backed roadmap to fix this issue. We're utilizing the specific chemistry of timing preparation and food synergy.
So you get all the nutritional benefits without giving up the things you genuinely love to eat.
To truly understand how this invisible blockade works, though, we have to completely reframe our foundational understanding of the plant kingdom.
We really do. As consumers, we've been conditioned to view fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains simply as static ingredients sitting in a grocery store aisle.
Just waiting to be eaten.
Right. But biologically speaking, these are highly evolved, living organisms. Their primary biological imperative is to survive, protect their offspring, and reproduce.
Which puts them at a massive evolutionary disadvantage compared to the animal kingdom. I mean, if a predator comes after a deer, the deer engages its sympathetic nervous system and physically runs away.
It's the fleas.
But if a predator comes after a plant, the plant is literally rooted in the dirt. It cannot run, it cannot hide.
It doesn't have claws or teeth to fight back.
And it cannot camouflage itself.
What's fascinating here is that because plants lack the ability to physically flee or fight, they were forced by natural selection to evolve an entirely different, highly sophisticated defense mechanism.
Over hundreds of millions of years.
Yes. They develop their own localized forms of chemical warfare. They naturally synthesize complex organic compounds designed specifically to deter predators.
Whether that's insects foraging animals or even early humans.
Exactly. To deter them from over-consuming them, particularly their seeds, which represent the next generation of their species. In the realm of nutritional biochemistry, we categorize these specific defensive compounds as anti-nutrients.
Anti-nutrients. It really sounds like a comic book villain or some synthetic chemical engineered in a lab.
It does, but it is entirely natural.
Let's look at the mechanics of what actually happens when these plant defense compounds enter the human digestive tract, because it is essentially a biological clash.
A huge clash.
Hmm.
When you consume a plant rich in these compounds, they travel down through your esophagus and into your stomach and intestines.
Where they act like highly charged biological magnets.
They aggressively seek out and bind themselves to the essential positively charged vitamins and minerals that happen to be floating around in your digestive chyme at that exact same moment.
Or in some specific instances, they bypass the minerals entirely.
Right, they directly interfere with your own endogenous digestive enzymes, effectively disabling your body's ability to break down the food matrix entirely.
The magnetic attraction is incredibly strong. You have done the mechanical work of chewing your stomach acid, has done the work of breaking down the initial food structure.
And the vital nutrients are right there floating in your intestinal tract.
But because these anti-nutrients have chemically handcuffed themselves to the minerals, your intestinal wall cannot access them.
Specifically, those tiny microvilli responsible for pulling nutrients into your blood, they're blocked. The molecules are now too large and structurally complex to pass through the intestinal barrier.
Consequently, those precious nutrients you painstakingly planned your meals around are locked into insoluble complexes.
That just simply travel the rest of the way through your colon and are excreted.
You gain absolutely zero nutritional value from them.
Zero. However, we need to establish a crucial caveat immediately because the last thing we want to do is trigger unnecessary food fear.
Or add to the overwhelming dietary dogma out there. Anti-nutrients, despite their ominous name, are not universally evil.
Exactly. So please do not pause this and go throw out all the vegetables in your crisper drawer. We are not advocating for a carnivore-only diet here.
Far from it. The profound irony is that the exact same foods that contain the highest concentrations of these anti-nutrients, foods like legumes, raw nuts, whole grains, and dark leafy greens, are simultaneously some of the most critical foundational elements of human health.
They're packed with vital dietary fiber that feeds your microbiome, powerful polyphenols that act as systemic antioxidants,
And a whole host of other phytonutrients that your body desperately needs to mitigate inflammation and function optimally.
For furthermore, in very small manageable doses, some of these anti-nutrients actually act as mild stressors that trigger your body's own antioxidant defense systems.
A concept known as hormesis.
Exactly. So the goal for you listening to this right now is absolutely not elimination. The goal is mastering strategic consumption and preparation.
It is essentially about outsmarting the plant's defense system using human ingenuity. We have to bypass the security system without destroying the house.
That's a great way to put it. And to do that, we look at four main pillars.
4 specific variables that dictate exactly how much of a biological impact an anti-nutrient is going to have on your system at any given moment.
The first pillar is the sheer quantity consumed. Are you eating a balanced rotational diet, or are you basing your entire nutritional protocol around massive daily quantities of one single raw vegetable?
The fundamental rule of toxicology applies here. The dose makes the poison.
Exactly. If you are eating a mountain of raw spinach every single day, twice a day, you are delivering a massive concentrated dose of that specific plant's defense chemicals to your gut.
Overwhelming your body's ability to process it. The second pillar is the preparation method. We didn't just discover fire and cooking to make things taste better.
We did it to unlock nutrition. Whether a food is consumed completely raw, lightly steamed, vigorously boiled, soaked in acidic water, or left to ferment for days, drastically and fundamentally alters its anti-nutrient profile.
The third pillar focuses on the microenvironment of your stomach, specifically your food pairings at that exact meal.
What else is physically present in your digestive tract when that anti-nutrient arrives? As we'll explore shortly, certain compounds can actually rescue minerals from being bound.
While others accelerate the loss. And finally, the fourth pillar is highly individualized, your unique gut health and your baseline digestive capacity.
A robust, highly diverse gut microbiome, rich in specific bacterial strains, actually possesses the localized enzymes required to degrade some of these anti-nutrients on your behalf.
Whereas a compromised, inflamed gut will suffer the maximum penalty.
Right.
That gives us a really solid, actionable framework.
Right.
Quantity, preparation, pairing, and personal gut health.
So with that biological baseline firmly established, let's look at how this plays out in the real world.
Let's dive into your daily routine, starting from the exact moment you wake up. We are going to look at the morning saboteurs, because I can almost guarantee that the vast majority of you listening begin your day with one of two things.
A cup of coffee or a cup of tea.
They are arguably the most widely consumed pharmacological substances on the planet, and they are beloved for very valid reasons.
They provide mental acuity, metabolic stimulation, and comfort. But both coffee and tea, particularly black and green varieties, are massive sources of complex organic compounds known as polyphenols and tannins.
Now, while the wellness industry loves to praise polyphenols for their antioxidant capabilities, which is entirely valid, they have a very dark, aggressive side when it comes to early morning nutrient absorption.
They actively and aggressively inhibit the absorption of non-heme iron.
Which is the specific type of iron you derive from plant-based foods, fortified cereals, and supplements.
As well as zinc.
Let's actually role-play this scenario because it happens in millions of households every single morning. Let's say you are really committed to your health goals. You wake up at 7 a.m., you head to the kitchen and prepare a massive nutrient-dense bowl of steel-cut oats.
You sprinkle a handful of pumpkin seeds and crushed walnuts on top.
On paper, you have just created an absolute powerhouse of non-heme iron and zinc. And because it's 7 a.m., you naturally brew a large, beautiful French press of dark roast coffee.
Or maybe you steep a strong, astringent cup of English breakfast tea to drink right alongside it.
You sit down, taking bites of the oatmeal and washing it down with the hot beverage. It feels incredibly healthy. But walk me through the exact biochemical sequence happening the second that combination hits the stomach lining.
The moment that mixture enters the acidic environment of your stomach, a highly localized chemical reaction takes place. The tannins and polyphenols in your coffee or tea possess a specific chemical structure that is highly reactive to the molecular shape of non-heme iron.
They seek it out.
Aggressively. Before your stomach acid even has a chance to fully break down the oats, these tannins locate the iron molecules and tightly bind to them. They form massive complex macromolecules.
Remember our earlier discussion about the intestinal barrier?
Right. These newly formed tannin-iron complexes are physically too large to pass through the specific transport channels in your intestinal wall.
So they simply bypass the absorption sites entirely.
And we are not talking about a negligible loss here. Massive clinical data quantified this exact interaction. They demonstrated that consuming a single cup of tea concurrently with a meal reduced the absorption of that meal's iron by up to a staggering 62%.
62%. That is well over half of the nutritional value of your carefully planned breakfast, completely neutralized and flushed away.
Simply because of the beverage you chose to drink with it.
And coffee is right there too. That same clinical data showed that consuming a standard cup of coffee with a meal reduced iron absorption by about 35%.
We really have to clearly identify the target demographic here because this isn't just an abstract biochemical trivia fact. This interaction is clinically critical for several highly vulnerable populations.
If you are a woman of reproductive age, you are naturally losing significant iron stores every single month through menstruation.
If you are a vegetarian or a vegan, you are entirely reliant on that non-heme plant iron, which is already substantially harder for the human body to absorb than the heme iron found in animal proteins.
And if you are a hard-training endurance athlete, your overall iron turnover and red blood cell destruction rates are massively elevated.
For individuals in these groups, habitually sacrificing 35 to 62% of their meal's iron every single morning is a guaranteed fast track to chronic fatigue, impaired recovery, and eventually clinical anemia.
Which completely recontextualizes the sheer volume of fatigue complaints we see. You have people who are exhausted, and their blood work shows low ferritin, which is the long-term storage form of iron in the body, and they are completely bewildered.
They will literally point to their food diary and say, look at all these iron-rich foods I'm eating. How can I be deficient?
But the moment you analyze the timing of their habits, you realize they are habitual coffee or tea drinkers who consume these heavily tannic beverages right on top of their meals.
Totally blind to the chemical warfare happening in their gut.
So what is the strategic roadmap here? Because telling our listeners to abandon their morning coffee is a non-starter. I love my morning coffee, and I am not giving it up.
Nor should you. The fix here doesn't require restriction. It requires a basic understanding of gastric emptying times, We call this the 1-hour rule.
The 1-hour rule.
All you have to do is strategically delay your coffee or tea consumption until at least 1 full hour after you have finished your meal.
Or, if you are an early riser, consume your coffee an hour before you sit down to eat.
By implementing this temporal separation, you allow your stomach to process the food, release the iron, and pass it into the small intestine where it can be fully absorbed unhindered.
By the time the tannins arrive an hour later, the iron has already cleared the checkpoint.
If you absolutely cannot break the psychological habit of having a hot beverage while you chew your food, the safest pivot is to switch to a mild herbal tea.
Like peppermint or chamomile.
Exactly, because those generally contain a significantly lower tannin concentration compared to black, green, or oolong teas.
That is the ultimate low-effort, high-reward biological hack. You keep the coffee, you just shift the timeline. Now, while we are still in the morning hours, we have to address another massive, universally consumed saboteur: dairy products.
Milk, yogurt, cheese, whey protein shakes.
This introduces a completely different mechanism of biological interference. With the coffee and tea, we were analyzing a chemical binding issue, the tannin physically trapping the iron.
But with heavy dairy consumption, we are looking at a localized biological traffic jam at the cellular level. Dairy is heavily promoted and rightly recognized as one of the richest, most bioavailable dietary sources of calcium.
However, calcium and iron have a highly antagonistic relationship within the human digestive system. To be absorbed, both of these essential minerals literally must compete for the exact same intestinal transport proteins.
Let's visualize this using the architecture of the gut. Your intestinal wall isn't just an open sponge, it is a highly regulated border crossing.
There are specific limited pathways, specifically a protein called divalent metal transporter 1 or DMT1.
Think of DMT1 as a very exclusive set of revolving doors that allow these metal ions to pass from the gut lumen into the bloodstream.
Because iron and calcium share a similar atomic charge, they both have to use this exact same set of doors.
If you flood your digestive system with a massive dose of calcium, it physically crowds the receptors. The calcium monopolizes the doors,
Completely blocking the iron from getting through before the food mass moves further down the digestive tract.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanism of competitive inhibition. The calcium hogs the transport proteins, saturating the DMT1 channels.
And what is most surprising is just how little calcium is required to trigger this blockade.
Extensive research has confirmed that a localized calcium dose of just 300 to 600 milligrams, which equates to roughly a single standard glass of cow's milk or one typical serving of Greek yogurt, can slash the absorption of both heme iron from meat and non-heme iron from plants.
By an astonishing 30 to 50% during that specific meal.
And to compound the issue, the primary protein structure in dairy, known as casein, has been shown to subtly but effectively block the uptake of zinc as well.
Let's run another daily scenario. Imagine you are actively trying to boost your iron levels. You decide to cook a beautiful, expensive grass-fed steak for dinner, the ultimate source of highly bioavailable heme iron.
But out of habit, you pour yourself a tall glass of milk to wash it down.
Or perhaps more commonly, you have been prescribed a clinical iron supplement by your doctor, and you decide to swallow that pill first thing in the morning with your daily bowl of yogurt and granola.
In both of those incredibly common scenarios, that 300 to 600 milligrams of calcium is immediately slamming the DMT1 door shut.
Effectively rejecting 30 to 50% of the iron you are actively trying to assimilate. You're literally paying for a supplement and then neutralizing it in your own stomach.
It is entirely counterproductive, and it represents a significant public health blind spot, particularly concerning pediatric nutrition.
Consider young toddlers and children whose rapidly developing bodies desperately require massive amounts of both calcium for skeletal development and iron for neurological and cognitive development.
If well-meaning parents are serving every single iron-rich meal like fortified cereals or meats with a mandatory large glass of milk, that child is chronically missing out on the critical iron they need for brain health.
The same principle applies to pregnant women who are trying to manage gestational anemia while simultaneously keeping their calcium intake high.
So the actionable fix here is acting as a biological air traffic controller. You have to manage the flow at the receptors.
Precisely. Similar to the coffee rule, this requires temporal strategic separation.
If you are consuming a meal specifically designed to be iron-rich, or if you are taking a dedicated iron supplement, you must separate it from your heavy dairy consumption by a minimum of 2 hours.
Allow the iron to travel through the stomach, access the DMT1 doors, and be fully absorbed into the serum. 2 hours later, once the transport proteins have cleared and reset, You can introduce your calcium-rich dairy without any competitive interference.
Okay, we have successfully navigated the morning saboteurs, the tannins in coffee and tea, and the competitive inhibition of dairy.
Now we're stepping into a much more controversial area. We have to confront some deeply uncomfortable truths about the foods universally crowned as the ultimate pillars of health.
We are calling this the healthy traps.
Let's start by analyzing whole grains and bran.
Whole grains, such as whole wheat, brown rice, and oats, are universally and heavily praised by nutritional guidelines globally.
They provide undeniable cardiovascular benefits. They are a phenomenal, slow-burning source of complex carbohydrates, and they are packed with essential dietary fiber that feeds the microbiome.
However, the exact architectural feature that makes them a whole grain, the fibrous outer layer known as the bran, is exceptionally high in a very specific, highly reactive anti-nutrient called phytic acid or phytate.
And within the realm of nutritional science, phytic acid is universally recognized as one of the most aggressive, indiscriminate nutrient binders in existence.
Let's dig into the biology of the phytate trap. Why does a seed even have this compound, and what exactly is it doing inside our gut?
We have to view this from the plant's perspective. A seed, which is what a grain is, needs a massive store of energy and minerals to eventually germinate and grow into a new plant.
Phytic acid is simply the plant's biological storage vault for phosphorus. The plant locks the phosphorus up tight so it doesn't degrade.
But when a human consumes that phytate-rich bran, it enters the digestive tract and acts like a highly charged chemical sponge.
It aggressively seeks out and binds to positively charged metallic minerals. Specifically, phytic acid binds tightly to iron, zinc, magnesium, and calcium.
It locks these vital minerals into highly stable, incredibly dense, insoluble structures called phytate complexes.
And the critical failure point here is that human biology simply never evolved the necessary internal machinery to unlock that vault.
Unlike ruminant animals like cows or sheep who have multiple stomachs and specialized bacteria, humans lack the necessary endogenous digestive enzyme, which is called phytase.
Phytase is required to cleave and break those phytic acid bonds. Because we can't break the complex, it just passes straight through our gastrointestinal tract and out of the body.
Taking all our expensive minerals with it. Let's look at the hard data on this because it is staggering. Comprehensive physiological reviews have demonstrated that a high dietary intake of phytates can reduce your zinc absorption by anywhere from 15 to an unbelievable 60%.
60%. If your daily dietary staple consists of high-bran cereals, dense whole wheat bread, or massive bowls of raw unsoaked oats, you are effectively neutralizing up to 60% of your zinc intake before it ever reaches your bloodstream.
It is a massive systemic loss, especially considering how critical zinc is for immune function, testosterone production, and cellular repair.
But this is exactly where the ancient science of food preparation becomes your greatest biological asset. Let's refer back to our second pillar of anti-nutrient management, preparation.
The seed uses phytic acid to lock away nutrients until the environmental conditions are absolutely perfect for it to grow.
If we can artificially mimic those exact environmental conditions in our kitchen, signaling to the seed that it is time to germinate, we can force the seed to disarm its own phytate vault.
This is where we get into the deep chemistry of food prep. I am geeking out over this. How exactly do we trick the seed?
The most historically ancient yet scientifically sound method is prolonged soaking. When you submerge grains or legumes in water and leave them at room temperature overnight, you introduce the moisture required for germination.
This moisture activates the seed's dormant internal enzymes, most importantly, the enzyme phytase.
The plant literally begins producing the exact enzyme we lack. The endogenous phytase begins to actively break down and destroy the phytic acid.
Releasing the stored phosphorus and neutralizing the trap, simply soaking your grains in warm water for 12 hours can reduce the total phytate content by 50 to 70%.
Sprouting takes this biological process even further. Allowing the seed to physically germinate and sprout over a few days maximizes phytase production and almost entirely eradicates the phytic acid.
Which totally explains why our ancestors intuitively prepared grains this way. But what about bread? Because asking people to sprout their own wheat berries is a tough sell in modern life. Millions of people rely on whole wheat bread for their daily sandwiches.
This is where the biological magic of true fermentation comes into play. And it explains precisely why traditional ancestral bread-making techniques are nutritionally vastly superior to modern commercial baking.
Authentic sourdough bread.
Yes, authentic sourdough bread does not use commercial fast-acting baker's yeast. It relies on a slow, laborious fermentation process, utilizing a symbiotic culture of wild environmental yeast and lactobacillus bacteria.
As the lactobacillus feeds, it produces lactic acid, creating a highly acidic environment in the dough.
This acidity, combined with the long 24 to 48-hour resting time, provides the perfect conditions for the phytase enzymes to completely degrade the phytic acid.
From a pure mineral bioavailability standpoint, a slice of genuine slow-fermented artisanal sourdough bread is exponentially superior to a mass-produced slice of commercial quick-rise whole wheat bread.
Which retains almost all of its phytate content. Even subjecting grains to high-heat cooking reduces phytate levels to some degree. The ultimate biological takeaway is that human digestive tracts were simply never designed to process these dense grains in their raw, completely unprepared state.
So the cheat codes here are soaking, sprouting, and seeking out genuine sourdough fermentation. Okay, let's transition to our next incredibly common healthy trap, legumes.
Beans, lentils, chickpeas, soybeans.
We all know they're incredible, inexpensive powerhouses of plant-based protein, dietary fiber, folate, and iron, but they come armed with their own highly aggressive defense mechanism.
They absolutely do. Legumes utilize a highly complex cocktail of anti-nutrients, but the most notorious and, frankly, the most physically dangerous compounds found in legumes are called lectins.
Lectins are a highly specific, sticky type of carbohydrate-binding protein. In nature, they protect the bean from fungi and insects.
But when introduced into the human body in high concentrations, lectins behave aggressively. They are highly resistant to our stomach acid, meaning they arrive intact in the small intestine.
Where they physically bind to the epithelial cells, the delicate single-cell lining of the gut wall.
This binding causes severe localized irritation, triggers an inflammatory immune response, and severely hinders the microvilli's ability to absorb any surrounding minerals.
We really need to deep dive into the danger zone here, because with phytates, we were talking about chronic, silent nutrient loss. But with lectins, we are talking about acute, highly aggressive, visceral digestive distress.
Walk me through the exact pathology of what happens if someone unknowingly consumes a raw or even severely undercooked legume, like a standard red kidney bean.
Red kidney beans in their raw state contain astronomically high concentrations of a highly toxic specific lectin called phytohemagglutinin. It is incredibly potent.
If an individual consumes even just a small handful, perhaps 4 or 5 raw or inadequately cooked kidney beans, that specific lectin aggressively attacks the mucosal lining of the gut.
Within just a few hours, the body recognizes it as a severe poisoning event and initiates a rapid, violent purge. The individual will experience severe, crippling nausea, intense vomiting, and explosive diarrhea.
It is not just mild indigestion. It is a genuine, acute biological defense mechanism executing its purpose flawlessly.
That is legitimately terrifying. And it's wild that something so toxic in its raw state is sitting casually on a grocery store shelf.
But before anyone panics, throws out their grandma's chili recipe, and swears off beans forever, we have highly effective, biologically proven, actionable fixes.
How do we disarm the lectin bomb before we eat it?
Thermal destruction. High sustained heat is the ultimate non-negotiable weapon against lectin toxicity. Thorough, vigorous boiling denatures the complex protein structure of the lectin, neutralizing it almost entirely.
The mandatory scientifically validated gold standard for preparing any dried bean is a preliminary 8 to 12 hour soak in room temperature water.
And this next step is absolutely critical and where many people fail. You must discard the soaking water.
Do not, under any circumstances, cook the beans in the murky water they just soaked in, because a massive percentage of the water-soluble anti-nutrients and lectins have leached out into that liquid.
You must rigorously rinse the soaked beans. Submerge them in fresh, clean water, and then subject them to a vigorous rolling boil for at least 10 to 15 minutes before lowering the heat to simmer.
Which is a time-consuming process. But what about the modern technology in our kitchens? I feel like almost everyone has an Instant Pot or some form of pressure cooker nowadays. How does that change the equation?
The modern pressure cooker is absolute biological magic when it comes to legumes. The sealed environment allows water to surpass its normal boiling point, creating extreme superheated temperatures combined with high atmospheric pressure.
This specific environment completely annihilates the lectin protein structures and drastically reduces the phytate content in a fraction of the time it takes on a stovetop.
If you are a vegetarian, or if you simply love incorporating beans and lentils into your weekly meal prep, a pressure cooker is quite literally one of the most effective investments you can make to guarantee your nutrient absorption and protect your gut lining.
Okay, we have thoroughly covered the greens and the legumes. But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a little heartbreaking for the salad lovers. We need to dissect the ultimate undisputed health food.
The dark, leafy green that Popeye historically made famous for building muscle. We are talking about spinach.
Spinach is universally perceived as the undisputed champion of the vegetable world. But underneath that green halo, it is hiding a massive chemical secret.
It is indeed the ultimate nutritional paradox. While it is absolutely true that spinach is densely packed with essential vitamins, folate, powerful antioxidants, it also natively synthesizes exceptionally high concentrated levels of an organic compound called oxalic acid, commonly referred to as oxalates.
Oxalates are highly reactive organic acids that, much like the phytates we discussed earlier, function as aggressive mineral chelators. They bind incredibly tightly to positively charged minerals in the digestive tract.
But while phytates target a broad spectrum, oxalates have a particularly relentless, highly specific affinity for calcium and iron.
Which leads us directly into what we call the spinach calcium paradox. This is something that completely shatters conventional dietary wisdom. If you look at the standard nutritional label on a bag of raw spinach, it clearly states that it contains a massive, highly beneficial amount of calcium.
It looks like the perfect bone-building food.
But that nutritional label is effectively lying to you, or at the very least, it is completely failing to provide the biological context of what your human digestive system can actually extract and utilize.
Exactly. A nutritional label merely lists the total chemical inventory contained within the cellular structure of the leaf. It tells you absolutely nothing about bioavailability, what actually successfully crosses the intestinal barrier and enters your bloodstream.
And the clinical data on spinach is absolutely mind-blowing. Highly controlled studies directly compared the human body's exact absorption rates of calcium derived from vastly different dietary sources. They utilized isotope tracing to see exactly where the calcium went.
They established that a healthy human body successfully absorbs and utilizes approximately 32% of the calcium present in a standard glass of cow's milk.
Do you want to remind the listeners what the exact absorption rate was for the calcium trapped inside that raw spinach?
I know exactly what it is, and it still shocks me every single time we discuss this data. It is a measly, almost non-existent 5%. 5%.
That's only 5%. It is remarkably inefficient. The exceptionally high concentration of oxalic acid synthesized by the spinach completely locks away its own internal calcium reserves, as well as a massive portion of its iron content.
These essential minerals become permanently trapped in highly stable microscopic calcium oxalate crystals. And because human biology completely lacks the enzymes required to break down these specific crystal structures, they remain entirely inaccessible.
The spinach essentially sabotages its own impressive nutritional profile, and unfortunately, spinach does not act alone.
We see this exact same oxalate-heavy profile in other massive offenders in the vegetable kingdom, including Swiss chard beet greens rhubarb, and to a slightly more moderate but still significant degree, almonds and almond butter.
Which completely disrupts the modern wellness narrative.
Yeah.
If you are dutifully throwing together a giant raw spinach and almond salad every single day for lunch, genuinely believing you are fortifying your skeletal system with incredible amounts of plant-based calcium, the biological reality is that you are absorbing almost none of it.
It's passing straight through you.
So what is the actionable fix here? Do we just abandon spinach and admit defeat?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because despite the oxalate trap, spinach still offers immense, highly bioavailable value in terms of vital dietary fiber folate and vitamin K, which is crucial for blood clotting.
The solution once again lies in the chemistry of preparation. You must apply heat.
Specifically, rapidly steaming or blanching the spinach in hot water actively degrades the cellular structure and leaches out or destroys 30 to 50% of the water-soluble oxalates.
The thermal reaction literally breaks down the organic acid, effectively freeing up a significant portion of the trapped minerals. The hard rule is never ever rely on massive quantities of raw spinach as your primary foundational mineral source.
Heat is a massive recurring theme here. Cooking really was the catalyst for human brain development.
It absolutely was. It unlocked the calories and the minerals. The other, perhaps even simpler, actionable fix is to strategically diversify your greens. Not all dark leafy greens are burdened with high oxalate concentrations.
If your goal is to consume highly bioavailable, easily absorbed plant-based calcium that your body can actually use immediately, you need to heavily rotate low oxalate greens into your daily diet.
Cruciferous vegetables like kale bok choy and broccoli are absolute powerhouses here. They possess a vastly different chemical makeup, and the calcium contained within those specific vegetables is incredibly bioavailable and readily absorbed by the human gut without any complex preparation required.
Dietary diversity truly is the ultimate biological hack. Don't eat like a specialist, eat like a generalist.
Okay, we have exhaustively covered the complex world of natural plant defenses. But now, as we move into the next phase of our deep dive, we have to look closely at the modern human-made issues. We call these the systemic saboteurs.
These aren't just natural plant compounds temporarily locking up a mineral or two during a single meal. These are powerful external agents that actively, systematically damage the entire foundational architecture of your absorption system.
And we have to start with the most socially prevalent one, alcohol.
We must categorize alcohol entirely differently from the natural anti-nutrients we've discussed so far. Compounds like phytates in grains and oxalates in spinach simply bind to specific minerals forming inert complexes. They are chemical traps.
Alcohol, specifically ethanol, on the other hand, is a potent solvent that causes direct systemic physical tissue damage to the intricate mucosal lining of your entire gastrointestinal tract.
To understand the severity, you have to picture the inside of your intestines.
Yeah.
They are not smooth tubes. They are lined with millions of tiny finger-like, hair-like microscopic structures called microvilli.
These microvilli dramatically increase the surface area of your gut and are the exact physical structures responsible for pulling nutrients out of the digested food chyme and transporting them into your bloodstream.
When you consume alcohol, it acts as a localized toxin, actively blunting, inflaming, and physically eroding these delicate microvilli.
So it is essentially taking a blowtorch to the highly specialized equipment your body relies on to harvest nutrients. You are destroying the intake valves. What specific vitamins and minerals get systematically depleted when you are drinking regularly, even just moderately?
It results in a massive, sweeping physiological depletion across multiple critical pathways. First, regular alcohol consumption massively impairs the initial absorption and simultaneously increases the rapid urinary excretion of the entire B vitamin complex.
Specifically, folate, B1, which is thiamine, and B6. These are the exact vitamins required for cellular energy production and neurological function.
Secondly, it heavily depletes your zinc reserves. In fact, severe zinc deficiency is one of the most reliable, universally recognized clinical markers in individuals who consume alcohol regularly, which directly suppresses their immune system.
Furthermore, alcohol acts as a highly potent chemical diuretic, specifically for magnesium, literally forcing your kidneys to flush this crucial relaxation mineral straight out of your system, leading to terrible sleep and muscle cramps.
And cumulatively over time, ethanol severely interferes with the liver's ability to metabolize vitamin D, which in turn completely halts calcium absorption, creating a direct, accelerated pathway to osteopenia and severe bone density loss later in life.
And the collateral damage doesn't stop at the intestinal wall or the kidneys, right? Because we also have to look at the cascading downstream effect alcohol has on the gut microbiome itself.
Absolutely. The gut microbiome is essentially a highly sensitive symbiotic ecosystem. Clinical reviews have highlighted that even strictly moderate, socially normalized alcohol intake significantly and rapidly alters the delicate composition of your gut bacteria.
It creates a state of dysbiosis. The ethanol effectively kills off the highly beneficial anti-inflammatory bacterial strains,
while simultaneously allowing opportunistic, highly pathogenic bacterial strains to overgrow and dominate.
It essentially transforms your entire digestive tract from a perfectly tuned processing plant into a highly hostile, chronically inflamed environment where delicate micronutrients simply cannot survive or be absorbed efficiently.
In clinical practice, when patients make the decision to reduce their alcohol intake, even just shifting from what they consider moderate daily drinking to minimal occasional drinking, they almost universally report rapid, life-changing improvement in their baseline energy, their cognitive clarity, and their sleep architecture.
And that subjective improvement is directly correlated with the biological reality that their B vitamins, their zinc levels, and their gut lining are finally being given the opportunity to repair and restore themselves.
It's exactly like turning the main breaker back on in a house that's been sputtering along on a cheap backup generator.
Okay, let's pivot to another massive, highly engineered systemic saboteur hiding in plain sight, ultra-processed foods. And specifically, I want to unpack the artificial phosphate spike.
This is a critical distinction that often confuses people, so we need to firmly differentiate between naturally occurring organic phosphorus and synthetic artificial phosphates.
Phosphorus in its natural organic form, which you find abundantly in whole foods like nuts, seeds, legumes, and high-quality meats, is an essential foundational mineral for human health.
It is literally part of the structural backbone of your DNA, and the human body possesses sophisticated, highly evolved regulatory mechanisms to manage exactly how much organic phosphorus it absorbs from whole foods.
However, the modern industrialized food system heavily utilizes synthetic inorganic phosphate additives.
They use them as incredibly cheap preservatives, texturizers, and artificial flavor enhancers in almost all deli meats, fast food items, and highly processed, shelf-stable packaged snacks.
And because these artificial additives are engineered in a lab rather than grown in the ground, our bodies react to them drastically differently.
Drastically and dangerously differently. Because these artificial phosphates are inorganic, they are not naturally bound to any complex cellular food matrix like fiber or protein.
Therefore, when you consume them, they are absorbed rapidly and almost entirely. Nearly 100% absorption directly across the intestinal wall and into the bloodstream.
This rapid influx causes a sudden, massive, unnatural spike in your circulating blood phosphate levels. And the human body is biologically desperate at all times to maintain strict homeostatic equilibrium in the blood.
To balance out this sudden dangerous spike in phosphorus, a parathyroid gland panics. It aggressively signals the body to immediately pull highly stabilizing minerals, specifically calcium, magnesium, and iron out of your biological reserves to buffer the blood.
It is a violent chemical seesaw. The artificial phosphates slam down heavily on one side of the scale, and your precious calcium and magnesium stores immediately get catapulted out the other side to keep you alive.
And we really have to shine a massive spotlight on a major, globally consumed culprit here. Soft drinks. Dark sodas and colas specifically.
Yes, the clinical concern regarding soft drinks is extensively documented and highly validated. Cola-type sodas are absolutely loaded with highly concentrated phosphoric acid to give them that sharp, tangy bite.
Foundational epidemiological studies track this exact phenomenon, specifically in cohorts of women over time. They established a clear, direct, undeniable link.
Women who regularly consumed cola beverages presented with significantly measurably lower bone mineral density across the board compared to those who abstained.
The daily influx of phosphoric acid was systematically chemically leaching the calcium right out of their skeletal structure week after week, year after year.
That is a wild, incredibly sobering visual. Simply drinking a standard diet cola with your lunch sandwich is actively chemically weakening the structural integrity of your bones.
So the actionable, non-negotiable takeaway here is crystal clear. You must heavily limit ultra-processed packaged foods and completely eliminate dark sodas to stop this artificial phosphate spike from draining your mineral reserves.
Now let's look at the final systemic saboteur, and this one presents the ultimate frustrating irony in the health world. We are talking about excessive isolated fiber supplements. We are literally bombarded with the message that we all need more fiber.
And that foundational message is correct. Intact, complex dietary fiber derived from eating whole fruits, vegetables, and complex grains is absolutely critical for a healthy microbiome and proper bowel motility.
But the problem arises because we have developed this very dangerous, highly reductionist, more is always better mentality when it comes to engineered supplementation.
Millions of people routinely take highly concentrated, synthetically isolated soluble fiber supplements. Powders like psyllium husk inulin or highly refined gar gum specifically to force digestive regularity.
But how exactly does forcing that much isolated fiber into the gut backfire on our nutrient absorption? To understand the failure, you have to visualize how soluble fiber physically behaves.
Think of a massive dose of psyllium husk as a giant, highly viscous, incredibly sticky sweeping broom moving aggressively through your delicate gastrointestinal tract.
Its primary physical job is to bind to waste, bulk up the stool, and carry it efficiently out the exit.
But if you take a massive concentrated scoop of this psyllium husk powder right before, during, or immediately after consuming a highly nutritious meal, that sticky broom does not possess the biological intelligence to discriminate.
It sweeps up the digestive waste. Yes, but it simultaneously sweeps up all the newly liberated calcium, the precious heme iron, the zinc and the magnesium from the expensive food you just finished eating.
It physically traps all of these vital minerals within a thick, impenetrable, viscous gel and carries them entirely out of your body long before the intestinal microvilli ever have a chance to pull them into the bloodstream.
The clinical data drop on this specific interaction is genuinely eye-opening for anyone who relies on these powders. Comprehensive studies have noted that consuming high doses of supplemental isolated fiber concurrently alongside a meal rapidly reduces the absorption of zinc by a massive 20%.
One entire fifth of your dietary zinc instantly swept away into the toilet simply because of a poorly timed digestive aid.
So what is the precise actionable fix for the listener who genuinely needs or simply wants to continue taking a daily fiber supplement for their gut motility?
The protocol requires a complete shift in perspective. You need to stop treating isolated fiber supplements like a food product and start treating them exactly like you would treat a highly sensitive prescription medication.
You do not ever take them concurrently with food. The rule is strictly temporal. You must take your fiber supplement with a massive glass of water completely separate from your meals.
Ideally, this means consuming it at least 2 full hours away from any substantial meal and absolutely 2 hours away from any other highly concentrated vitamin or mineral supplements you might be taking.
You must allow your body the necessary time to process, break down, and fully absorb the nutrients from your food first.
Only after the nutritional payload has safely crossed into your bloodstream do you send the physical broom through the digestive tract to clean up the residual waste.
Treat it like a highly sensitive medication and take it in the dead space between meals. Perfect.
So, we have successfully walked through the dense biology of plant defenses. We've navigated the morning saboteurs of coffee and dairy. We've dismantled the healthy traps of grains and spinach. And we've exposed the systemic disruptors of alcohol, phosphates, and fiber.
Now we enter the final, most actionable phase of our discussion. This is the absolute masterclass in nutrient absorption.
Because the most pressing question is, how do you definitively know if all of this invisible biochemical sabotage is actually happening to you right now? What does this actually look like in your daily life?
Let's meticulously walk through the body's warning lights, the physical, undeniable red flags of chronic cellular deficiency.
Our bodies are incredibly communicative, highly sophisticated machines if we simply learn how to decipher the signals they are constantly sending us.
The absolute primary flashing red dashboard light, the one that drives the most people to the clinic, is chronic, persistent, unyielding fatigue that remains completely unresolved despite getting adequate 8-hour sleep.
If your sleep hygiene is perfect, yet you are still waking up feeling physically crushed and exhausted, your underlying cellular energy production, specifically the mitochondria's ability to generate ATP, is likely fundamentally failing due to missing critical micronutrients like iron, magnesium, or B vitamins.
What about the visible external physical changes we can actually see in the mirror?
The external tissues, particularly the fast-growing extremities, provide a massive amount of clinical data. Examine your hands and head.
Fingernails that have become highly brittle, that are constantly peeling, splitting, or breaking under minimal pressure, or periods of sudden, completely unexplained diffuse hair loss, are textbook classic clinical signs of systemic mineral depletion, particularly zinc and iron.
Moving to the muscular system, experiencing frequent, intensely painful muscle cramps, spasms, or even just subtle muscle twitching, especially occurring in the calves or feet late at night while resting, are massive, undeniable red flags indicating a severe depletion of the relaxing minerals, primarily magnesium and calcium.
And what about the cognitive side? I know we briefly mentioned brain fog in the intro, but what does that actually feel like neurologically?
Subjectively, brain fog feels like trying to think through molasses. It presents as an inability to focus, difficulty retaining short-term information, forgetting words mid-sentence, or just a general persistent feeling of feeling mentally sluggish and unsharp.
Neurologically, this heavily points to a lack of essential B vitamins or a failure in oxygen delivery to the brain tissue.
Moving back to the visible physical signs, if you notice unusually pale skin, particularly looking at the inside of the lower eyelids or the gums, or if you find yourself feeling chronically cold in normal room temperatures, or experiencing sudden shortness of breath after very minor physical exertion, like walking up a single flight of stairs.
These are the absolute hallmark, undeniable symptoms of advanced iron deficiency anemia. Your body literally lacks the hemoglobin to transport oxygen.
Furthermore, if you observe that minor cuts or scrapes take an agonizingly long time to heal, or you find yourself constantly catching every single minor cold or respiratory infection that circulates the office, you are highly likely looking at a severe deficiency in zinc or vitamin D, which are fundamentally crippling your immune system's response capabilities.
Finally, experiencing a sensation of pins and needles tingling or subtle numbness in your distal extremities, your hands and feet, is a very specific, highly localized warning sign of a severe vitamin B12 deficiency, which directly impacts and degrades peripheral nerve function.
Now, obviously, we need to insert a very clear rapid safety note here. While everything we just discussed represents the chronic, long-term, highly frustrating warning signs of silent starvation, if you ever experience sudden, severe, crushing chest pain, extreme, sudden physical weakness where you cannot stand, acute difficulty breathing while resting, or episodes of fainting, that is absolutely not the time to wait around. Listen to this deep dive and try to adjust your spinach intake.
That constitutes an acute medical emergency, and you need to seek immediate professional emergency medical care.
But assuming you are simply dealing with the chronic, low-level, deeply frustrating symptoms we just extensively listed, we have incredible, highly actionable news for you.
Because as specialists, we don't just know how to identify and stop the saboteurs. We know the exact biological cheat codes required to actually supercharge your cellular absorption.
Let's talk about the elegant art of strategic food pairing. This is the science of food synergy.
Food synergy is one of the most exciting, promising concepts in nutritional biochemistry. It is the validated concept that certain specific nutrients, when consumed concurrently in the exact same meal, exponentially enhance and multiply each other's absorption rates.
They do not compete. They work cooperatively as a highly efficient biochemical team.
The absolute most powerful, most exhaustively scientifically proven example of this synergy in the human body is the strategic pairing of highly stubborn plant-based non-heme iron with a concentrated source of vitamin C.
This is hands down my favorite biological hack. Please talk about the specific chemical mechanism and the sheer numbers here because it is staggering.
It truly is astonishing chemistry. As we've established, non-heme iron derived from excellent plant sources like spinach, lentils, or oats is notoriously aggressively difficult for the human gut to absorb.
It exists in a chemical state known as the ferric state, or F3+, which the gut wall struggles to process.
But if you simply introduce a rich, potent source of vitamin C ascorbic acid to that exact same meal, a rapid chemical reaction occurs right there in the stomach lumen.
Whether that means squeezing fresh, highly acidic lemon juice heavily over your spinach salad, aggressively pairing bright, crunchy bell peppers with your lentil stew, or simply drinking a small, concentrated glass of orange juice alongside your morning oatmeal, the vitamin C physically interacts with the iron.
It acts as an electron donor, chemically reducing the iron from the stubborn ferric state down into the highly bioavailable ferrous state.
It transforms the metal into a form that is incredibly easy, almost effortless for your DMT1 receptors to rapidly uptake.
Implementing this simple zero-cost food pairing increases your total iron absorption from that meal by an incredible scientifically validated 3 to 6 times.
3 to 6 times more functional iron entering your bloodstream simply by adding a quick squeeze of citrus before you take a bite. That is a massive systemic biological hack.
Now, what about our lipid-based nutrients? Let's talk about the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and K.
The crucial, absolute, necessary crew for absorption is right there in the biological classification. Fat soluble.
These specific, highly complex vitamin structures physically require dietary lipid molecules, fats, to act as the essential transport vehicles, or chylomicrons, to ferry them safely across the watery barrier of the intestinal wall and into the lymphatic system.
This precise biological requirement is exactly why the pervasive, highly damaging 1990s diet trend of eating massive dry salads aggressively drenched in zero-fat synthetic dressing was completely nutritionally useless.
If you force yourself to eat a massive bowl of dense dark greens packed with massive amounts of vitamin A, beta-carotene, and vitamin K, but you consume absolutely zero dietary fat alongside it, your intestinal tract is biologically incapable of processing it.
Your body absorbs almost none of those precious vitamins they just passed through.
You absolutely non-negotiably must pair these greens with a high-quality, healthy fat, whether that is slicing half an avocado on top, throwing in a handful of oil-rich nuts, or applying a generous, heavy drizzle of extra virgin olive oil to chemically unlock, transport, and successfully absorb those specific critical nutrients.
So forcing down a dry, fat-free salad is basically just a colossal waste of chewing and jaw energy.
What about our old friend calcium? We know it aggressively fights and competes with iron at the receptor level, but who is calcium's best biological friend?
Calcium's mandatory, non-negotiable synergistic partner is vitamin D. You can consume all the high-quality calcium in the world, you can drink gallons of milk or chew massive calcium carbonate supplements all day long, but without adequate circulating levels of activated vitamin D in your endocrine system, your gut simply cannot manufacture the specific transport proteins required to move that calcium from the intestinal lumen into the bloodstream and eventually deposit it securely into your skeletal bone matrix.
They must be present and working together to achieve any biological success. And finally, when we look at maximizing zinc absorption, Pairing your plant-based sources of zinc like pumpkin seeds or legumes with a small, highly concentrated amount of high-quality animal protein naturally and effectively enhances the overall bioavailability of the zinc.
The specific amino acids in the meat bind to the zinc, helping it safely bypass the aggressive phytate traps we discussed earlier in the grains and beans.
It's exactly like assembling the Avengers of nutritional biochemistry right there on your dinner plate. Everything functions exponentially better when it works as a coordinated team.
But to truly master this, we have to look beyond just the chemistry of pairing on the plate. We have to look at the entire biological system. Let's talk about holistic optimization. Let's start with the absolute foundation, your gut health.
We extensively detailed how chronic alcohol consumption aggressively destroys the delicate gut microbiome. But thankfully, we have the immense capability to actively purposely build it back up.
Consuming a daily rotation of high-quality live fermented foods, incorporating things like plain unsweetened kefir, raw unpasteurized kimchi, or genuine refrigerated sauerkraut, introduces billions of highly beneficial active probiotic bacteria directly into your digestive tract.
A diverse, robust, highly populated microbiome doesn't just sit there passively. These bacteria are highly active microscopic chemical factories.
They actively manufacture specific essential B vitamins, they synthesize critical vitamin K2, and crucially, they produce short-chain fatty acids that create a highly specific, slightly acidic microenvironment in the colon.
This lowered colonic pH significantly measurably aids in the final extraction and absorption of highly stubborn essential minerals before they leave the body.
And we also have to address the mental neurological side of digestion, the undeniable mind-gut connection. Because stress isn't just an abstract feeling floating in your head, it chemically and physically alters the entire operating environment of your stomach, right?
Absolutely. It is a massive, highly physical systemic shift. This reality raises a critically important question about our hyperconnected, high-stress modern lifestyle.
When you are operating under a state of chronic, relentless psychological stress, whether you are anxiously worrying about a work deadline, gripping the steering wheel while rushing through terrible traffic, or staring at highly stimulating, stressful news on your phone while you frantically eat your lunch, your autonomic nervous system aggressively shifts into a highly dominant sympathetic state.
This is the classic fight-or-flight survival response. In this specific neurological state, your brain assumes you are in immediate life-threatening physical danger from a predator.
Therefore, it instantly, ruthlessly shuts down all non-essential long-term biological functions, and that primarily includes the entire complex process of digestion.
The vagus nerve significantly reduces its signaling, which drastically immediately lowers your stomach's production of necessary hydrochloric acid. It also severely alters your gut motility.
Meaning, the smooth muscle contractions move the food through the tract, either far too fast, causing diarrhea and malabsorption, or far too slow, causing severe constipation and putrefaction.
Without an adequate, highly acidic pool of stomach acid, you physically cannot denature and break down complex proteins, and you lack the chemical power to cleave tightly bound minerals like iron, B12, and calcium away from their dense food matrix.
You are literally biochemically stressing yourself entirely out of absorbing your necessary nutrients, regardless of how perfect the food on your plate is.
So the advanced biological advice isn't just eat better food. It is fundamentally you must downregulate your nervous system and relax while you eat.
Which brings us perfectly to perhaps the absolute most overlooked, seemingly ridiculously obvious yet almost totally forgotten mechanical step of human absorption, the simple act of chewing.
It sounds incredibly elementary, almost like advice you give a toddler. But thorough mechanical digestion is the absolute non-negotiable mandatory first step in nutrient release.
Your stomach, despite its powerful acid, does not have teeth. If you are rushing through your meal and you swallow large, unchewed, structurally intact chunks of dense food, the subsequent digestive enzymes and stomach acids physically cannot penetrate the dense cellular surface area required to effectively extract the nutrients trapped deep inside.
Taking the necessary time to deliberately, thoroughly chew your food until it is almost completely liquid in your mouth achieves two critical biological imperatives.
First, it mechanically shears and breaks down the tough, fibrous cellulose cell walls of the plants, physically exposing the nutrients.
Second, it intimately mixes the pulverized food with highly specialized salivary enzymes, specifically amylase and lingual lipase, which actually begin the complex chemical digestion process of carbohydrates and fats before the food mass ever even drops down the esophagus and hits your stomach.
Rushing your meals, eating at your desk, and failing to chew fundamentally and severely impairs your total nutrient absorption from step one.
Chew your food, people. It is the ultimate free absorption hack.
Okay, we have covered a truly massive, incredibly dense amount of biological ground today. Let's consolidate this. Let's do the big summary.
Let's rapidly recap the ultimate highly actionable toolkit so you can start putting this complex science into practical application right now.
It all distills down to executing a few core, highly strategic daily habits. First, religiously utilize the 1 hour rule. Intentionally delay your morning coffee and tea consumption until at least 1 full hour after your breakfast to completely protect your vital iron and zinc stores from tannin binding.
Second, deeply respect the ancient science of preparation. Diligently soak your dried beans and grains overnight and utilize a pressure cooker for your legumes to effectively annihilate the lectin proteins and degrade the phytate traps.
Third, handle the oxalate dilemma wisely. Never rely on raw spinach for minerals, always steam or blanch it, and purposefully diversify your daily greens by heavily incorporating highly bioavailable, low oxalate options like kale and bok choy.
Fourth, you have to become an expert at managing your biological traffic at the receptor level. Strictly space out your heavy dairy consumption, as well as any isolated fiber supplements, far, far away from your most critically nutrient-dense meals or your expensive daily vitamin and mineral supplements.
And fifth, leverage the biological cheat codes of food synergy. Absolutely always pair your stubborn plant-based non-HEMA iron sources with a potent hit of vitamin C to multiply absorption and ensure you always have a source of high-quality, healthy fats present on your salads to successfully unlock and transport those critical fat-soluble vitamins.
These are not massive dietary overhauls. These are small, highly strategic, entirely manageable, consistent daily tweaks to the timing and preparation of what you already eat.
You absolutely do not have to overhaul your whole life or restrict your favorite foods, but these small, precise shifts compound heavily over time into massive, life-altering physical energy shifts.
And as always, before we close, we want to provide a very quick but highly necessary medical disclaimer. Everything we have meticulously discussed today on this deep dive is strictly for educational and informational purposes, designed to help you deeply understand your own biological machinery better.
If you genuinely suspect you are dealing with actual clinical deficiencies based on the specific physical warning signs we comprehensively detailed, the absolute smartest, most responsible first step is to get comprehensive, objective data on yourself. Go get annual blood work.
Specifically, explicitly ask your doctor or healthcare provider to run a detailed panel that specifically checks your ferritin levels, not just standard iron, your active B12, your vitamin D3, your serum zinc, and your RDC magnesium levels.
And always consult directly with a qualified physician or a registered dietitian who can evaluate this data within the context of your specific genetics, your medical history, and your lifestyle.
Exactly. Don't guess, get the hard data on yourself. Now, as we finally wrap up this incredibly deep dive, I want to leave you with a concept to really ponder and integrate into your worldview.
If we take a step back and connect all of this intense biochemistry to the much bigger picture, it really fundamentally flips our entire modern industrialized understanding of wellness completely on its head.
For decades now, the entire multi-billion-dollar health, fitness, and wellness industry has been relentlessly obsessed entirely over what we put into our mouths.
We obsessively track macronutrients. We meticulously count every single calorie we swallow. Massive daily handfuls of highly expensive, heavily marketed supplements, essentially treating our complex biological bodies like simple mechanical calculators perfectly tallying up a ledger of vitamins.
But what if the ultimate final frontier of optimizing human health isn't about the sheer volume of consumption at all?
What if it is entirely fundamentally about the efficiency of retention? I want you to truly imagine how your daily life, your baseline energy levels, and your long-term physical health trajectory might radically transform if you simply stopped driving yourself crazy, trying to constantly eat and buy more things.
And instead simply started unlocking and absorbing the full, incredible biological potential of the food that is already sitting right there patiently waiting on your plate.
That is a phenomenal, massive paradigm shift in perspective. True health is about retention over consumption. Stop obsessively buying more expensive premium fuel and start doing the intelligent work to fix the engine so it actually runs on what you give it.
Thank you all for dedicating your time and coming on this incredibly dense, fascinating biochemical journey with us today.
If you want to start aggressively applying these concepts and taking true informed control of your own biology, the absolute best time to start is with your very next meal. And if you loved this level of granular detail and actionable breakdown, please hit that button and subscribe to the channel.
It is the best way to ensure you never miss another one of these customized, highly specific deep dive breakdowns.
Until next time, keep optimizing, keep chewing your food, and we will see you on the next deep dive.